Hi, I'm Tom Brookshire.
And I'm Pat Summerall. The last few weeks, while most of the divisional championships were being decided, obviously there were many factors which helped decide those titles. But one factor which can never be discounted, especially this late in the season, is old man weather.
Oh, I'll tell you, Pat, we've certainly had our share of horrible conditions the past few weeks. We had rain and cold, snow, and gale-force winds. Do you really think one team has the advantage over the other in bad conditions?
I sort of got a feeling a team like Minnesota, which is used to the cold weather, has an advantage over a team that's not used to it.
Of course, you kicked a 50-yard field goal in a blinding blizzard. You couldn't even see the uprights, right?
That's probably why it was good.
Yeah, I always thought that it helped me because it slowed down the offensive speed that I didn't have on defense. But
they tell me the Eagles' Steve Zabel has an interesting story about last week up in the Yale Bowl against the Giants.
A couple of linemen came on top of him like this and forced him down, and he said he almost drowned before he finally got up out of a mud puddle. But he did win, and I guess that's the story, too.
I think you're right. We'll be right back with This Week in the NFL after this message.
Last Sunday, when the Pittsburgh Steelers traveled to Foxborough, Mass. to face the Patriots, both teams still had a shot at the playoffs, and one New England player had a shot at the all-time NFL record for total offense in one season.
Among the giants who populate professional football, one man stands head and shoulders below the rest. His name is Mac Heron, and at 5 feet 5 inches, he could easily become lost in the shuffle of much larger bodies. But when Mac Heron gets a football in his hand, he becomes one of the leading ground gainers in the history of the sport. The all-time total offense leader for one season was Gale Sayers with 2,440 yards in 1966. Mac Heron with 2,259 yards is just 181 short of the record. Last Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mac Heron accumulated 145 yards against the AFC's #1 defense, and he scored the game's first touchdown. In the second quarter, Mac Heron set up another touchdown, but this time for the wrong team. Trailing 12-7 with time running out in the first half, Jim Plunkett again looked deep for New England's Mr. Big, Mac Heron. This play covered 48 yards and set up a John Smith field goal. Then in the second half, it was Mac Heron again with another touchdown. For the day, Mini Mac either scored or set up all of the 17 points New England could manage against Pittsburgh's steel curtain defense. The Steelers' quarterbacking job seems to have fallen by default to Terry Bradshaw. But during the past 2 months, with 3 different starters at quarterback, the Pittsburgh offense hasn't really exploded on anyone. Last week, the offense was carried mostly by Franco Harris, 29 times for 136 yards. Terry Bradshaw completed 10 of 16 passes, but for only 86 yards and 1 touchdown on a Lynn Swan dive. The Steelers, for now, can afford to rely on a conservative game plan because first, they have the best rushing offense in the conference, and second, they have the best overall defense in the conference. It was these 2 elements which last week knocked the Patriots out of the running and gave the Steelers their 3rd consecutive trip to the NFL playoffs.
Pat, that little Mac Heron is just something else. He needs only 182 yards, about an average day for him, to break the all-time one-season record held by Gale Sayers.
Another record, which might be broken this week, Tom, is not one to be proud of. Unless the Atlanta Falcons can score 45 points this week against Green Bay, they will have scored the fewest points in a season since the 14-game schedule was adopted back in 1960. And last week's Falcon game in Minnesota didn't help too much, even though they scored their most points in 6 weeks, 10.
When you start seeing those ever-popular pictures of the Minnesota weed burners, you know that it's Viking weather in Bloomington, which means that it's about time to start the playoffs. You could hardly blame the Vikings if their minds were elsewhere last Saturday, but some old pros just don't know how to take it easy, like Dave Osborne, number 41. Dave Osborne, the 31-year-old running back, now in his 10th year out of North Dakota, has had a surprisingly effective year with well over 700 yards in total offense. And last week against Atlanta, he added 132 more, along with 2 touchdowns. At quarterback for Minnesota was number 17, Bob Berry, a Falcon starter for 5 years until he became Fran Tarkenton's backup last season. In his first start of this season, Berry hit on 14 of 22 passes, including a touchdown to tight end Stu Voigt, number 83. It has indeed been a frustrating season for the Falcons, and last week it was time for a fuzzy-cheeked rookie quarterback from Lehigh to make his first start in the pros, in hopes of injecting some life into Atlanta's moribund offense. Number 11, Kim McQuilkin, threw 25 passes, completed 11, but was intercepted twice and sacked 4 times by the Purple Horde. The Atlanta Falcons' losing streak now stands at 8, in this, the most frustrating season of the team's 9-year history.
Last Sunday, while the Vikings had already locked up first place in their division, another team from the NFC Central still had hopes for the playoffs. With a win over Cincinnati, the Detroit Lions would keep alive their wild card aspirations, but it wouldn't be easy, for the Bengals just as desperately needed a victory to stay alive in their playoff race.
Legs have been the problem for the Bengals in recent weeks, but certainly not the arm of Ken Anderson, who leads the NFL in passing. Legs are the problem because the Bengals have lost their 2 starting running backs. In fact, the 2 best runners that Cincinnati has are both playing defense. Early in the game, cornerback Lamar Parrish returned a punt 45 yards to set up a field goal, and later a 26-yard interception return by safety Tommy Casanova set up another. But the Lions also got good running from other than running backs, and Ron Jesse's 18-yard reverse tied the game at 6. But passing, not running, has been Cincinnati's long suit due to all the injuries, and somehow it doesn't hurt as much when you've got Isaac Curtis to run under a rainbow. Detroit got a break on this one when Curtis was called for interference, and then got another when Greg Landry's pass was intercepted by Ken Riley, a return to Detroit when intended receiver Ron Jesse spiked the ball away. The Lions added a field goal on the last play of the first half that tied the game at 9. Then early in the second half, an Algie Taylor touchdown put Detroit on top 16-9. The Bengals would move to a 4th Horst Mullman field goal on their next series. But while gaining 3 points, they lost their quarterback. Trailing by 4 with their #1 quarterback Anderson gone, the Bengals' playoff chances looked lost. But Wayne Clark filled in quite nicely, thank you, and in the fourth period moved Cincinnati back in front. Ed Williams' touchdown gave the Bengals a 19-16 lead. But at about this time, Cincinnati learned of Pittsburgh's win, which ended the Bengals' playoff chances, while they in turn looked like they were about to foreclose on Detroit's playoff shot. Perhaps deflated by the end of their chance for postseason continuation, the Bengals let Jesse slip away for 45 yards. And on the next play, with 35 seconds left, Landry spotted Charlie Sanders with a perfect pass. Sanders gave the ball to Jesse, who spiked off camera stage left. For his outstanding performance in this game enabled the Lions to stay alive in the playoff race after their 23-19 victory over the out-of-the-playoff Cincinnati Bengals.
We'll be right back with This Week in the NFL after this message. When the Oakland Raiders and Kansas City Chiefs get together, Tom, there's always some bone-jarring and head-knocking, which leaves offenses sort of incidental.
And incidentally, Pat, the Raiders' win last week was their first ever in Arrowhead Stadium, although admittedly they did it with just about as little scoring as possible.
Last Sunday in Arrowhead, it was time to button down for both the Raiders and the Chiefs, as once again they launched into tribal warfare. As always in this hard-fought game, the only way Marv Hubbard, number 44, could gain yardage was to load 16 tons of Chief defenders. On the other hand, only Kansas City's Jeff Kenny, number 31, could make any headway against the staunch silver and black defense. He got most of his 124 yards through his own second efforts. Kenny's inspired running led to 2 Chief field goals, which for most of the afternoon looked to be enough for victory. Because for most of the day, turnovers and mistakes painted the Chiefs and Raiders as 2 teams in search of defeat. The theory seemed to be, anything you can do, I can do worse. Subbing for a resting Ken Stabler, number 3, Darryl LaMonica had 6 completions in 9 attempts. 3 to his teammates and 3 to Chief defenders like number 48, Nate Allen, whose long return led to naught. Finally, in this battle of dullness and defense finally made the difference when Jimmy Warren, number 20, filched this Lynn Dawson pass and wasn't stopped until he ran into teammate Otis Sistrunk. Warren's theft led to the only Raider offensive move of the day as Darryl went up top to the ever-present phantom of the end zone, Cliff Branch, number 21. The quick, deadly outburst gave Oakland victory number 11 in typical Raider Chief fashion, 7-6.
When you wake up a grizzly bear after 2 months of hibernation, he's bound to be a little ornery. Last week in San Diego, Abe Gibron and his Chicago Bears saw the sun for the first time in many moons, and they weren't exactly all smiles.
Chicago's season has soured Abe Gibron's normally sunny demeanor. So with nothing left to lose, the Bear lumbered into San Diego and dusted off rarely used portions of the playbook. A little vintage tight end quick kicking by Bob Parsons gave the Bears field position to get really fancy. The Chicago Bears are not famous for the flanker reverse, but number 80, Bo Rather, pulled it off in fine style. The experimenting Bears were not about to slight the belly option series, and Ken Granberry took a nifty pitch for the game's first score. On the other hand, San Diego was content to stick with bread and butter simplicity. Just hand the ball to Donnie Woods and get out of the way. Early in the game, the phenomenal rookie blasted for his 1,000th yard, marking just the 7th time in NFL history that a first-year man has reached that plateau. But for the 74 Chargers, Woods has been the complete back, as dangerous on a swing pass as he is off tackle. Woods pulled the Chargers even, but Chicago had a few more surprises in store. A passing attack, for one. Since a fast start early in the season, number 83, Charlie Wade, had gone underground. Suddenly, he was back flying high as the passing game set up a touchdown blast by number 36, Perry Williams. But everybody knows that Bobby Douglas can't pass a lick. And so, of course, number 10 went right back to the air. Number 85, Wayne Wheeler, spiked the flag as the surprising Bears pulled out every stop. But when you start fooling around with strange plays, it's hard to know when to stop. On the second half kickoff, the Bears tried one too many and were penalized 6 points. Number 61, Blinda Gay, a less-than-world-renowned rookie from Fayetteville State, accepted the gift on behalf of the San Diego Bomb Squatters, and then Jesse Freitas went to work. Number 17 is a rookie quarterback awash in the confusing swirl of shifting 4-3 fronts and rotating double zones. But by the fourth quarter, he had adjusted like a 10-year veteran. Freitas burned the Bears with number 87, Harrison Davis, to tie the score at 21. The next time Freitas got his hands on the ball, he didn't hesitate. 3 times in the drive, he went to Davis, yet another Charger rookie. A final 30-yard toss set up the go-ahead touchdown. With time running out, the persistent Bears kept searching through their repertoire and kept coming up empty. In the end, the Chargers dropped the ball, but managed to hold on to an exciting 28-21 victory over the misplaced Bears from Chicago, as both teams head into the season's finale with 4 wins, 9 losses, and no place to go but up.
Seems like every year the Denver Broncos are just 1 year away, Pat, and everyone expected this season to finally be the one which they really challenge the Raiders for the AFC West.
But unfortunately for them, Tom, the Broncos got off to a very poor start. And they didn't build up a full head of steam until the latter part of the season, as the Houston Oilers found out last Sunday.
It wasn't like the old days when rushing out to meet the Houston Oilers was like running into a mound of whipped cream. Nevertheless, the Broncos got to Dan Pastorini early just to keep him in the mind of those bad old days. But the Oilers' defense was only mindful of crunching Denver's Charlie Johnson, which they did 6 times for 51 yards in losses. The newly ferocious Houston pass rush forced Johnson to dump the ball short and quick to receivers like number 42, Billy Van Heusen. However, last Sunday, the prime Denver weapon was number 24, Otis Armstrong, who pounded for 183 yards to break Floyd Little's club record and tighten his grip on the NFL rushing lead with 1,265 yards. Armstrong gave the Broncos an early lead on a 10-yard burst, and Denver was never to be headed. With the Broncos leading 17-0, the Oilers finally generated some offense on a reverse to number 84, Billy Johnson. Johnson scooted 25 yards, which was enough to set up a 1-yard pop by Fred Willis, which made the score 17-7 Denver. But then came Otis again, this time on a 12-yard sprint to pay dirt, which upped the Bronco lead to 23-7. In former years, the Houston team would lay down and expire at this point in the ball game, but last Sunday they never gave up. Another Pastorini to Johnson hookup accounted for a near touchdown as Billy shuffled and weaved for 44 yards. From there, Pastorini hit Jeff Queen in the end zone to make it close, 23-14. But it wasn't close for long as Charlie Johnson came right back to hit Haven Moses and just about wrap up the victory. All that was left was for Otis Armstrong to tie a big bow on the package, which he did with his third touchdown of the day as Denver rode over Houston 37-14. And although the Broncos are not playoff bound this year, with men like Otis Armstrong on the roster, next year they may truly present their strongest challenge ever in the AFC West. Well, things were back in place for the Dallas Cowboys last week, Pat, as Clint Longley sat on the bench and watched Roger Staubach destroy the Cleveland Browns.
The Cowboys were then still alive for a wild card berth in the NFC playoffs, Tom, a position that they had maintained for an unprecedented 8 straight years.
In Dallas, the Doomsday defense gave Mike Phipps a double dose of trouble. Roger Staubach burned the Browns early with a perfect strike to uncover Golden Richards. Just seconds later, Phipps threw blindly into the waiting arms of veteran safety Cornell Green. Once again, Staubach selected Richards, and Dallas was rewarded with its second touchdown in 90 seconds and a 14-0 lead. Facing a blowout, Phipps aired it out twice to fleet Steve Holden. Holden beat the coverage of Charlie Waters deep, and then he beat him for 6 with a picture-perfect catch at the end line. Cleveland rallied to within a field goal at 17-14 when Ken Brown scooted in on a picture book sweep. But Dallas lumbered down and blew out the Browns with ground power. The Lightning was supplied by rookie Charlie Young, and the Thunder by veteran Walt Garrison, who slashed in behind Billy Joe Dupree, number 89. Staubach found a similar 1-2 punch through the air. For the medium strike, there was the NFC's leading receiver, Drew Pearson. For the home run, there was his rapidly improving tight end, Billy Joe Dupree. Dupree's touchdown turned the game into a rout, as all the Doomsday defense had to do was sit back, play pass, and wait for the breaks. The break fell into the hands of D.D. Lewis, who set up the Cowboys nicely for 6 more. The 41-17 rout was complete when Walt Garrison pounded over behind number 64 Jim Arneson, as Dallison won a laugher over the Cleveland Browns.
The city of New Haven, Connecticut is well known as being a famous tryout town for pre-Broadway shows, Tom.
That's true, Pat, but for rookie quarterback Mike Barilla of the Eagles, his stage was the Yale Bowl, which due to 2 days of torrential rains looked more like a fishbowl, and certainly no place for a rookie with jitters.
At 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Yale Bowl resembled your basic mud hole. At 3:30, it looked like the setting for the creature from the Black Lagoon. Under these horrible conditions, it was no surprise that the Eagles' defense held the Giants to 3 first downs in the opening 30 minutes. But on a day when cloven hoofs, not cleats, were needed, rookie Eagle quarterback Mike Barilla displayed the poise and daring of a Roman Gabriel, the man he has supplanted. On this day meant for Ducks, Barilla passed for over 200 yards to a variety of sure-fingered sloggers. Barilla's prettiest pass of the day went for naught when number 85, Charlie Homeboy Smith, was called for offensive pass interference. The man Barilla counted on in the clutch was Charlie Young. Even when he fumbled, the determined tight end got up and flew into the muck to recover the ball. On this dreary day, Young caught an incredible 9 passes for over 100 yards and zeroed in on the reception leadership in the NFC. Like Charlie Smith, Charlie Young saw a touchdown catch voided by an offensive pass interference penalty. But a smart quarterback, even if he is a rookie, always stays with a good thing, so Barilla went back to Young and Philadelphia led 13-0. Only once did Craig Morton lead the Giants through slop in the Eagles' defense. A nifty catch and run by Walker Gillette set up the Giants' only score, a play-action touchdown lob to Joe Dawkins. At game's end, the scene looked like a vintage 1940 or 1950 pro football game, with uniforms caked with slime and numbers muddied beyond recognition. Only one thing shone brightly: Eagles 20, Giants 7.
If only the San Francisco offense had been as potent as their defense, this may have been a banner year for the 49ers. In their last 4 games, the 49ers have allowed but 1 touchdown.
Last Sunday in Candlestick Park, the positive side of the Green Bay offense was only rarely in evidence. Short, outlet, and flare passes to running back MacArthur Lane, number 36, twice moved the Packers in for field goals. But that was it for the day. Eventually, John Hadel's passes got him in trouble, as did this one picked off by number 57, Frank Nunnally. But while the Green Bay offense sputtered, so did the 49ers, which was scoreless through 3 periods. Finally, an interference penalty gave San Francisco the go field position. From there, first-year running back Sammy Johnson, number 48, took the ball and faked and juked his way to the 4-yard line. Number 24, Delvin Williams, did the honors on what came very close to being a minor tragedy instead of a touchdown, and San Francisco led 7-6. For the Packers, playing catch-up football led to trouble as once again John Hadel was intercepted, this time by number 49, Ralph McGill, who returned the ball 45 yards to the 4. But the 49ers couldn't score again before time ran out, so had to settle for a 7-6 win. A win due in major part to a big, tough defense that might have gone places in '74 if coupled with a more potent offense.
The St. Louis Cardinals needed only a victory last Sunday, Pat, to claim the crown of the NFC Eastern Division. But in order for the Cardinals to ascend to the throne first, the demise of the New Orleans Saints was certainly necessary.
Beating the Saints on their home turf was not going to be easy, though, Tom, because after 7 years of also-ran football, it finally appears as though New Orleans is on the verge of fielding a contender.
It can easily be said that for most of this season, the bark of the New Orleans Saints has been much worse than their bite. But against Jim Hart and his St. Louis Cardinals, big red gainers like this missile number 82, Earl Thomas, were few, due mainly to an obstinate New Orleans defense and partly to some unaccustomed failures in the basic Cardinal execution. The Cardinal mega play offense, which in early season literally tore the league in two, faltered under the gray skies of New Orleans. And replacing it was a supercharged Saint attack led by an unheralded rookie wearing lucky 13 named Larry Saipa. When Archie Manning and reserve quarterback Bobby Scott turned up lame, Saipa received a starting nod, and beautifully supported by a group of outstanding rookies, the Saints sounded a warning for the future. The Saints' most impressive youngster was Alvin Maxson, number 28, who swirled in, around, and through the Cardinals for 148 yards, a new Saints single-game rushing mark. Maxson featured a catch-me-if-you-can routine that, for at least on this Sunday, was as good as there was in the league. Alvin Maxson's 66-yard run put the Saints up by 7. However, the rookie show had only just begun. For waiting in the wings and set to play, can you top this, was another rookie, this one adorned with the number 27, a person named Rod McNeil. McNeil was the Saints' number 4 draft choice, and another look at the play revealed that the former USC star is apparently healed from earlier injuries which may have slowed his progress toward stardom. The Saints later scored when Larry Saipa surprised the Cardinals, slipping rookie tight end Paul Seal, number 84, around on the reverse. New Orleans won at 14-0 over the playoff-bound Cardinals. And as for next season, perhaps the Saints have taken the initial step towards the day when they might claim their first winning season ever. A year from now, we'll all know for sure.
Despite weather conditions which favored the highly refined ground attack of the Buffalo Bills, the New York Jets set out to prove the theory that you can pass during a driving rainstorm while standing in 8 inches of mud.
Possessing a master's touch when spiraling a football, some consider Joe Namath the greatest pure passer in the game today. But sometimes Mother Nature's interference forces even an ace like Namath and his head coach Charlie Winter to redirect their game plans. And so, during the first half, both the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets squared off and butted heads in a running duel, a fight that in 30 minutes produced not a single point. Little had changed by the third quarter, though Buffalo had begun to roll. Defying Mother Nature, Joe Ferguson then stepped back and speared number 40 J.D. Hill, also known as Mr. Clean. Hill's catch and carry put the Bills up on top. But on their next possession, Buffalo fumbled, and Joe Namath wasted little time in retaliation. Rich Castor's reception still left the Jets short by 1 as the not-so-automatic point after was missed, leaving it 7-6. Buffalo then summoned a big play out of its special teams, and number 26, Donnie Walker, responded. A Buffalo field goal up the visitors' lead to 10-6. But in the fourth quarter, Joe Namath gathered his troops and set out to capture win number 6 of the season. Jerome Barkham's brilliant catch of Namath's slippery pass put New York ahead for the first time in the afternoon, 13-10. But not to be outdone, Joe Ferguson rallied his crew and Buffalo mounted a threat. With number 32, O.J. Simpson, gaining good strides as a receiver, the Bills went to the well once too often and the Jets were waiting. Number 51, Ralph Baker, iced the victory cake by returning Joe Ferguson's pass 67 yards for the final Jet tally. Baker's run was greeted by an end-zone mob delirious over the fact that the Jets had just completed a 20-10 conquest of the playoff-bound Buffalo Bills.
Well, Tom, thanks in part to the Jets' victory over the Bills, the Miami Dolphins have clinched their 4th consecutive divisional title.
Well, they're an incredible team, there's no doubt about it, and they've had a season filled with injuries and controversy and even a visit to third place. Yet after last Sunday's victory over Baltimore, Pat, they're 10-3 and getting ready for the playoffs against Oakland.
Throughout the '74 season, the Miami Dolphins have labored under the sternest of pressures in their quest for an unprecedented 3rd consecutive world championship. They have won often this year, but often unconvincingly, and last Sunday their struggle against the Colts in many ways reflected the story of their season. Bob Greasy got his teammates underway on their first possession with a no-nonsense strike to Jim Mandich, good for 20 yards. Then Greasy handed the pigskin to Cyclone Benny Malone, who, after he opened his eyes, rapped off some tough yardage. After Malone's excursion, Bob Greasy very coolly waited in his protective pocket until someone got open. And sure enough, number 81, Howard Twilley, turned up unescorted, and it was suddenly Dolphins 7, Colts nothing. And while the Colts were experiencing somewhat of a defensive breakdown, their Miami counterparts were putting it all together to make life singularly miserable for Burt Jones. The defense's biggest play, however, came when number 38, Bill Olds, fumbled directly into the always eager hands of number 40, Dick Anderson, who took it all the way back to the Colt 35-yard line. From there, Greasy tossed to Paul Warfield, who absorbed two very high-impact shots as the Dolphins drove to a 14-point lead. On the next series, however, the Colts commenced a comeback as Jones to number 81, Roger Carr, covered 57 yards. But the Dolphins were quick to regroup, and Burt Jones and friends were smitten by an unyielding Miami goal line defense. Not until the fourth quarter did things brighten up for the Colts, and number 30, Stan White, led the way as he picked off a greasy aerial to put the Colts in business at the Dolphin 38-yard line. One play later, number 38, Bill Olds, had the Colts 34 yards closer with a ramble to the Miami 4-yard line. From there, the Colts could manage but a third field goal, but the score was now getting very competitive at 17-9. Once again, an opponent had found hope, and as world champions, the Dolphins faced yet another inspired challenge. Burt Jones propelled his 11th hour drive primarily on the catch-and-run ability of number 26, Lydell Mitchell. 13 plays, and 5 minutes later, Burt Jones rolled right and pitched to Bill Olds to trail by just a point. But a point was all the Dolphins needed, as they did just enough to clinch victory number 10 and division title number 4.
Well, Pat, we're not going to predict this time. I've got you 3 games in the win column, so it's sort of over.
Will you accept the press? We got the
Yeah.
playoffs coming up.
Got a double-up bet on the press? All right, that sounds like it.
We'll talk about that next week.
Been a great year for upsets, so maybe that's the reason we had so much trouble.
Been easy for you, though, not for me. At any rate, we'll be back next week to show you what happens around the NFL. I'm Pat Summerall.
I'm Tom Brookshire, and we'll see you next week.